Hello and welcome back to Sinews of War. In the previous episode we started with an attack near Brazil on some Spanish trade vessels, surrounding and capturing them and then putting them to work to trade for us. We also went to attack Spain on the American territory of Hispaniola, landing Van Nassau's force to besiege the lightly defended settlement. There was another naval battle as we moved to defeat the Spanish fleet near Amsterdam with a slightly larger fleet of our own. One of the main enemy warships caught fire early in the battle, making things relatively easy, and we destroyed their fleet, capturing some of their biggest ships, which is a great addition to our fleet. But the Spanish then struck back. They had boats both in the East Indies and Madagascar, which were able to come in and wreck my trading chances. One of my boats tried to stand its ground, did good damage to the enemy, but unfortunately a fire for them put them out of the fight, and they continued their rampage. Savoy came up with a force to besiege Paris. They didn't attack, but were going to have to sally out before they bring up more troops. Doven eventually destroyed the Spanish in Madagascar, but they still controlled the East Indies. And now we're going to sally out. I recruited a new General Voss at Paris to lead our very depleted army against Savoy to try and get rid of them. I don't think the paperwork is coming back. Do you? If we want my commission to be signed, stamped, and shoved up whatever orifice they go, then we shall be simply skeletons in braided jackets. Let me take my mandate to lead as a sort of credit in order to make it count now. And right now, we need to cut the Savoy army into pieces. Now I understand that we don't even have a single full-strength regiment in Paris, is that right? So be it. Last news from Amsterdam was that muskets are too expensive these days, so don't go thinking we'll get relief here. This is a closed battlefield. It won't open until something snaps. Could be us, could be the food supply, could be the enemy. Anyone else feel like making it the last one? We need to attack as soon as we can. Make sure the enemy don't get too comfortable out there. Sure, they have a lot, but we have a close supply depot and the men are tested. Having lots of militia is like having nothing. Our men will take them by storm and begin a rout that sends them back to their little villas with their tails between their legs and their arms rotting in the mud of the battlefield. Now, of course, I am not yet a real general, so you do not have to do what I say, strictly speaking. But you look like folks who enjoy the luxury of having someone else be responsible for your actions. So, why don't you all return to your regiments and let them know the good news? Here is our Paris garrison under General Voss sitting inside their artillery fort, waiting to sally out against Savoy. Savoy's army is currently falling back, running away from the fort in the style that I usually take in these such battles. I don't have any mortars this time, of course, but they're just going to run away anyway. They had slightly split their force, but they're going to reunite them straight away, rushing those guys back towards their main position. On the way, we will be able to get a couple of shots off at them, because I've put some men on the wall of the fort to man the cannons, but we're going to have to move out of the fort. We can't have everyone sitting inside because Savoy look like they're just going to sit at the back of the map. So we're going to form up for a proper line battle. I've got lots of cav in hiding, as you can see, but they're not going to be needed. We're going to have to pull them out and put them in the main line. The enemy very unlikely to go around to the fort there. So as we set up, I'm going to keep one unit of men on the wall so they can man the cannons. The cannons are in range of where the enemy formed up finally, so we're going to get shots off on them. Not really going to do anything. You see a couple of dead enemies there. Overall, those cannons on the wall are quite weak and inaccurate. There goes a shot sailing over the enemy. So we'll kill a couple of them, but the battle time will run out before that does any real damage, so we need to move up and engage them properly. Now, I deployed my demi-cannons out on the field to fire at the enemy. You can see my line infantry already moving up towards the enemy, but actually, the deployment of those cannons prompted the enemy to suddenly attack me, which was quite handy. So I'm going to rush my men back to take up a more defensive position, because my men actually have a slight hill just behind them. Now I think this is just a very AI-ish move of them suddenly being uncomfortable about being unranged, so they're going they're going to attack and try and destroy these cannons just because they're sitting in their range, and I suspect I could have exploited that by putting the cannons back there in the fort and just forcing the enemy to attack the walls. Maybe we'll try that in a future battle to see if it works. A couple of my men stuck in the fort door there, not too useful, but hopefully we can win without those guys who seem to just be lost to the art of getting through a door. So the battle's now going to start properly. The enemy comes with loads of cavalry and rushes them around to attack my left. They're going for a frontal attack. I'm protected by some cliffs on the extreme left flank there, so they don't have too many choices. They're going to have to attack frontally if they want to get in quickly. We're going to kill some of them as they come in, but it's not enough to stop their charge or rout the unit. They're going to make it, and so of course that's going to be devastating for that unit on my left flank, as the enemy swordsmen will now cut them apart in melee. We do though of course have the plug bayonets, so I'm going to equip them on this unit to improve our chances of fighting here. We also have a reserve unit just behind it. Right now they're just firing into melee, which is super dangerous, but the enemy's cavalry are actually coming all the way through as they push in more and more units and get all that mass to just smash apart the first unit. So that reserve unit's going to equip plug bayonets and go into this fight as well to try and turn the tide. Right now the enemy's cavalry seem to be everywhere. My formation totally disrupted and they're doing massive damage. They're going to get at least one of my units destroyed in that attack. Another unit of cav comes into attack slightly further down the line, again just in front of where my reserves were. I only had 2 reserve units and both of them end up getting deployed in to fight enemy cavalry with plug bayonets, so they charge in. This time we've got 2 units against their 1 of cav, so I'm hoping we'll be able to overcome these guys. Point blank cannon range fire from the wall, they're killing both sides. Those guys up there need to be careful. Now the rest of the line is having a more ordinary experience. We're just going to line battle at maximum range, the least deadly form of engagement, so both sides will hold out for a decent amount of time here. We are exposed though on the far right. To start with, I had my cavalry on the far right to guard against any attacks, but they actually took my cavalry by surprise with this attack through those woods, killing some of my cav, and I took a while to notice, so they're going to get a couple of volleys into the side of that cavalry unit before I get them out of the way. Jumping back over to the other side of the line, you can see we've repelled one of the enemy's cavalry units, but the big blob of enemy cav is still fighting. I've thrown in my own cav though, the guys in white, the enemy in orange, slight confusion colour scheme because the rest of the enemy's troops are in white. But anyway, we are basically winning. There are more white men than orange. We managed to cut the enemy's cav down with a rear attack from my own cav, and then the involvement of my bayonet troops among the ranks finishes them off. So we've routed all of the enemy's cav but 1 unit, I think, at this point in the battle, giving us a distinct cavalry advantage. Our left flank is destroyed, but it's not being engaged by enemy infantry, so it doesn't really matter that it was destroyed, and we can now move cavalry out on the left to start peeling against the enemy's centre, which could be deadly. On the far right, my cavalry are rushing away, exposing my right flank. The reason they're running away is because the enemy's pikes are charging them. Of course, we don't really have anything to counter the pikes in our army. All we can do is try to not fight them, or just throw as many troops against them as we can and try and rout them before they do too much damage. On my right flank, the enemy are actually doing a very bold move. They're charging tons of our line infantry in really close to my line. Here you can see the flank regiment on my line about to get hit by the enemy. The enemy's line infantry stopped right in front of them. I think they were going to do a point blank range volley, but the militia coming in behind them ruined that plan by just getting in the way and smashing into my line. So the line infantry will join them, and the pikes actually come around, losing my cavalry and instead coming in against these men. So this is immediately very deadly. My men can't really escape. They're immediately surrounded by the enemy, and now they're going to be slaughtered, especially by the pikemen. They will have man-to-man advantage against the enemy's militia and line infantry because of the bayonets, but that's not going to make much difference. It's a different story on the other flank though, where my cavalry are now going to be able to destroy the enemy's centre by just constantly hitting it, and you can see I'm folding my centre around because we don't need so many units out there. And all the guys who had plugged bayonets have rushed away from the line to fight the enemy's reserves at the back in melee, a fight we should win because of our numerical and melee advantage.
Weet je nog dat ik zei dat ik geen paard zou vermoorden met dit ding? Dat neem ik terug. Die dingen zijn monsters. Heb je gezien hoe ze ons op de grond smeten? Een van de dingen die had me bijna te pakken. Hij trok mijn patroon van me af, terwijl de ruiter zijn zwaard zo dichtbij kreeg dat ik het bijna kon proeven. Maar ik had mijn musket gelukkig laag, dus ik stak het beest in zijn buik, het dier begaf het, de ruiter werd afgeleid en ik kreeg hem in zijn zij. Ik stak ze allebei gelukkig nog 2 keer. Gewoon voor de zekerheid. Het gooide allemaal zo snel. Ik dacht er niet eens bij na. Dus zoals ik al zei, ik denk niet dat ik het zo erg vond om die dingen te vermoorden.
With so many horsemen free on the field, we're going to be able to get the enemy's general. Here he is, trying to support the attack on our right flank. I hit him with a depleted unit of cav. It might not be enough to take down that unit, so we're going to swamp him with all of the cav we can get together, just totally surrounding the enemy general, because killing him is going to be key. There's the message. He goes down, and my cavalry will go in just to finish off his guards so that they rout off the field. So that's going to be a blow to the enemy's morale. Other cav now finishing off the enemy's centre. The centres on both sides are gone, as you can see, because my centre has had to move in to fight in melee against the enemy's attack on my right, because my initial right flank was just gone. Those men fighting the enemy's reserves win and send them running. There's one more enemy unit back there. I think it's a depleted unit that came back from routing, so they've got a tiny bit more fighting to do, but we've got enough men left alive over there that we can expect to win that part of the battle, which will be effectively finishing off the enemy's infantry everywhere except in this melee. And at this point, with the enemy's general dead, this melee actually starts to turn. The militia rout out of the fight, and that's going to reduce the morale of the other units, and there we see the pikes rout. That's the critical moment. Half of them still alive, but they're not going to do damage anymore. We're going to rush them with everything we have left. As I said, my entire centre had come into fight in this melee. We lost a couple of units of line infantry there, but it's not going to make a massive difference because our centre was relatively strong and didn't take too many losses, as that melee didn't last as long as it could have, thanks to the killing of the enemy general, no doubt. So we're going to chase them down and kill as many as we can. There was one more unit to finish off right at the back, and our guys with the plug bayonets are going to go and do that for us with support from the cavalry. So that ends the battle. I was quite pleased to see that we hadn't lost all of our army. I thought we'd taken devastating losses there, but it's less than half, and the enemy's losses are more than double ours. So overall, the result's okay. Savoy aren't going to be able to make another attack. It is probably a decisive victory for the war with Savoy. They'll have a couple of units, but they're not going to do much damage. You can see here, massive losses among some of our line infantry, and the cavalry getting masses of kills. Savoy are going to get away with a couple of regiments left alive, and those men, although not really a threat to Paris, are going to be able to go around and damage the infrastructure in France, which could end up being quite inconvenient, and because we're stuck in Paris thanks to public order, we can't really do anything about that right now. Neither can I replenish my forces because I have no money. One possible source of money right now, though, is asking Savoy for peace and getting them to pay me reparations for it. They absolutely rejected the deal where I asked for a bit of money. I wanted to see what they think of a white peace. They came back and said they would give me peace if I gave them Ceylon, which is an outrageous deal. So that's off the table. They've really got the wrong attitude about this whole thing. We're not going to have peace. Now, jumping over to the East Indies, we've got the Spanish ships to deal with. So we're going to band together all the ships we have in the area to try and make an attack against them. We basically have 4 trade ships, 4 fleets against the enemy's fleet, and a galleon. I wasn't too confident about this, but as I sailed in, the balance bar is actually in my favour by an okay amount, and I thought here what I'll do is try and just auto-resolve this, because my experience with fleets is that they're so unmanoeuvrable that in actual battle they just get circles run around them and get destroyed. So I thought I'd try and auto-resolve, and it's absolutely disastrous. We lose all of our ships, one of them captured to join the enemy fleet, and the enemy didn't lose any of their ships, so I have no idea what that balance bar was talking about. The enemy apparently had an absolute definitive advantage and destroyed us. I think I probably should have actually tried to fight that one myself. It couldn't have gone that badly. So that's a disaster. We've just lost all trade from the East Indies. That's going to cost us thousands a turn, and we don't have the income to get a fleet ready to go and take it back. So we've basically lost that area for the short term. The Savoy forces do the damage in Paris that I expected, but nothing too bad. And now jumping back to America, we're going to try and get some of our money back by resuming our raiding of the Spanish trade, which actually almost makes up for the East Indies losses. We've still got Nassau besieging Hispaniola with a little reinforcement army there, both of them at full strength, Nassau having been fully replenished in previous turns. So we really want to keep pressing this attack and take Hispaniola. The balance bar is like 75% in my favour. I didn't expect it to be so good. The enemy's force full of auxiliaries. They've got bowmen, irregular musketmen and axemen in there. So a force that's dangerous when it gets close but rubbish at range. They refuse to surrender, and this time I actually decided I would gamble again on an auto-resolve. We'd definitely win if I did it ourselves, but I thought maybe we'll get a better result auto-resolving against all of those melee troops than we would if we actually ended up fighting them in melee. The result this time, luckily, was actually okay. We lost 400, the enemy losing 4 times that number, so a pretty good result for Mortar Resolve. And luckily for us, the losses were distributed evenly across all the different regiments, which is a great way to distribute it because you don't end up losing any combat effectiveness. Everyone's still strong and able to fight. So the island we've just captured has a lot of potential. It can be upgraded with some plantations, but we're not going to do that now because our income isn't sufficient to be spending it on economics right now. We still need to keep our military growth going because we're under so many threats. But for Nassau, we know that Cuba over to the west there isn't really occupied by a strong force, so I'm thinking we might as well just go over there right now and take that as well to further increase our American domain. The area, if I don't tax it, is okay to have all of my forces leave, so that's great news. Nassau is going to take to the docks, and we're going to sail right over. The Spanish docks aren't occupied, so that means we can land right onto their island and start moving right away, although Nassau has used up almost all his movement points walking to his own dock, so this isn't going to make a decisive move. We can't get very far into their territory. Now, I realised immediately after making this landing, which you'll see, that it's actually going to take so long to walk from those docks up to the settlement. It probably would be faster to actually land this army right next to the settlement at the end of the island and then just wait for their movement points to replenish into the next turn and make the attack. But I've made my bed and now I'm going to lie in it. I start walking and that's when I realise how many movement points it's going to take to walk all the way over there. Far too far, but we can do this and there's no huge rush anyway. This island has the shoots of something great. Why the Spanish did not see it, I do not know. Maybe this all seems obvious to me since I've spent so much time in meetings with Mr. Lodovics and the company directors. Lots of potential for plantations and trade stations, plus it's a great springboard into North America. And even the Spanish understand the importance of the wealth that lies there. With proper direction, this island, and the whole Caribbean in fact, will be the bedrock upon which the success of the West India Company is built. And it is down to us to lay the works upon the foundations we have already dug. I just hope the Spanish do not offer terms before we finish eating up their empire. Back in Europe, I thought I would harass the Spanish in Brussels by moving some militia out to damage their industry, but I didn't realise they would be able to intercept them. The industry was just on the edge of their interception range. I thought I'd get away with it, but I didn't. Now I have the opportunity to just run away, but I thought that with some sneaky micro here, I might actually be able to damage the Belgian garrison. We've got 2 units of militia because my unit guarding my ports at Amsterdam is going to come and join the fight as well, apparently. So we're going to start this battle, and this proves to be a very long and very interesting fight. So we're going to be fighting in a town map, and that's going to add to the fun a fair bit because of all the pathfinding excitement. The enemy, of course, has just so many units that are better than mine that we're going to have to be super careful in this battle and play it really safe. The enemy will have artillery firing at me the whole time, but because we're on that town map, most of the time they're not going to have proper line of sight and the shots will just hit buildings, etc. So my units are going to be safe. I'm looking around, as you can see, for interesting places to put my men. There are some walls on the opposite corner of the map that I could use. Right now my first priority is to get my units linked up together before the enemy forces arrive and can attack me. Now the enemy horsemen actually came out in advance of the rest of their men, so once I linked my 2 units of militia up, I thought I'd actually sneak forward before the rest of the enemy's men arrive and shoot the horsemen who are just standing there at the edge of the map. I'm sneaking forward. My unit on the left actually doesn't quite have line of sight because of that little hill you can just about tell is there, so we're not going to get maximum firepower, but I eventually move up into range and we're going to get ourselves the first attack of this battle. It's a cheeky, mysteriously silent volley off into those cavalry, and we do manage to kill just a couple of them. The enemy's general running behind there might have had a chance of being hit by a stray shot, but no such thing happens. So those cavalry might now charge me, which would be a risk, but I'd be willing to let them do that. 2 units of infantry against 1 of cav isn't so bad, especially because just before this fight we actually finished researching the socket bayonet, the ring bayonet, sorry, the socket bayonet's the upgraded version, but the ring bayonet is pretty good. It makes my troops able to fight in melee and at range and makes them much better in melee. So I'm not concerned about being attacked by cavalry as much as I would have been if this had happened last turn. So now my strategy is to run round to the other side of the town from where the enemy's army is. The whole time the enemy's cannons are firing at me, and thanks to the buildings they're not hitting anything, although the buildings are being knocked down. But this is one of their towns. We are in their territory, so if they want to smash up their town for a chance to fire at these militia, that's fine by me. So we're already doing damage to the enemy. Now my plan was to come in the other side of the town and melee attack their guns to take them out, but unfortunately as I came in to try, the enemy were too close. They were also already inside the town, so I abandoned that strategy and instead decided to run out to the corner of the map to where those walls that I had seen were. But while I was going, the enemy cavalry caught up with me. Of course they can do that because they're faster, so I knew this was going to happen eventually. We're going to have to just fight these cavalry. I tried to get a volley off on them, but it's going to take too long to get that going because of all the weird firing mechanics. Instead, I'm going to engage them in melee. Now strangely, it looks like the enemy cavalry were actually turning to leave just as I charged, and I thought maybe I could not charge them, run back out of the town and continue to fire at them at range, because of course that would be even better. But as I gave the orders to actually abandon the melee, the cavalry get attracted into the melee and decide not to leave. So this actually ends up going worse than it could have done for us, because as I leave, the enemy's cavalry are going to rear attack me, now deciding they do want to fight, so I'm going to have to turn around and try and resist them. My men are still running away even after I give the attack order, a little bit confusing. So the enemy's cavalry get a decent charge, but you can see their units really spread out, which is quite nice. We're going to filter in between them with all of our militia, and they're going to use their bayonets to do some damage to these cavalry. It's a proper cavalry unit, regiment of horse, not as weak as provincial cavalry, which is what we've been seeing most of the time. So these guys will have a hard time. Militia aren't even very good in melee, but with all of our numbers and with our advantage against cavalry because of the bayonet, we are winning. The only way the enemy can stop me is to arrive with more troops, but those cavalry came out so far in front of their army they're not going to arrive in time. So thanks to this, we are going to be able to finish off this entire unit of cavalry with perfectly acceptable casualties. Of course, we need to make sure we don't hit our morale cap. The militia don't have as many men as it says they do effectively, because once their morale gets low, the rest of them will just leave. But for this particular battle, we'll be okay. The enemy's general and bodyguard approaching, but he is not going to be able to save these men. Okay, reports say the enemy are moving west from the old church, range of 800 meters. Let's drop a few shots that way.
Through the orphanage, sir.
Oh, okay, maybe not. We'll shoot ahead of the enemy to make them turn back. Just need to angle the guns a little more. Yes, that's it.
Isn't that the governor's wife's house, sir?
Blast, you're right. How about that one? Who lives in that house?
That'd be me, sir.
Thank God. Right, shoot that house until it falls, then we'll have a clear line of sight on the enemy.
But, sir!
Don't worry, it will grow back, I'm sure. Open fire. With those cavalry defeated, I made it to the walls at the back of the map, and the enemy's infantry were following me. I thought I might be able to have a gunfight with them here, but the enemy's infantry are light infantry who have extended range against regular infantry, so that's not going to work. All I can do is sit here and let their shots hit the wall and hope they run out of ammo. I decided not to go with that strategy because the pikemen would catch up and take us out. Instead, we need to do something that's faster. We're going to run right at the light infantry. One unit will charge them, while another unit causes a diversion by running off to the side. The light infantry are going to skirmish, making it hard for me to catch them, which is extra dangerous because the enemy's pikemen are getting close. We managed to hit some of them there, and we're going to keep chasing those guys while my other infantry try and distract the pikes. This is critical to this whole plan. If the pikes come and support the light infantry, the militia will not last 5 seconds, but if they decide to just chase my other unit of militia, we can keep them running away and give my militia a chance to beat the light infantry. Light infantry are usually weaker than regular guys in melee to make up for their extended range. So hopefully we can win that fight if we can actually catch them and get them to commit. And really luckily for me, the pikemen are actually taking my bait and following that other unit of militia, and we're just going to lead them on a complete wild goose chase off to some other part of the map while we focus on the light infantry. They're falling back to be near their general, but the general isn't reacting. He's not coming to join this melee. We're struggling to get the melee going because the light infantry have troops behind us as well. I think that's messing up the AI, but eventually we get them to commit to a proper fight. I'm looking at the woods trying to see where this pikemen have gone. I eventually see them escaping there. we've got lots of distance between us and the pikes, so I decided to form up and see if I can get a volley on those pikes before they catch up with me, just to damage them a bit. The light infantry now fully in melee. We see their general starting to move, but he's not coming in to support the light infantry. He's actually going to go and follow the pikemen and just move behind them. So those light infantry are being abandoned to just see how that fight goes, and it's going my way, so I'm fine with that. My other unit is going to rush into the town because now there's nothing between me and those guns once again. I might be able to make that attack. You can see the light infantry basically defeated now, so we finish them off, and then I bring those guys into the town as well to actually converge on the guns with all of my men. I was looking to see if there were any survivors from the light infantry. We killed basically all of them, and my 2 units of militia will now be able to hit those guns from both sides. The guns were moving, they were trying to get them out of the town, but that's just perfect for me, so I'm not going to take any fire as I come in. We attack from both sides. The enemy's gun crew are okay in melee, but they're totally overwhelmed here. The guns are destroyed, so we've taken out a very expensive unit from the enemy there, which is quite nice for us, and we just about have enough time to escape the town before the pikes and enemy general come into the town and lock me down in melee. They're right there. We're going to keep running. The general could have ran out ahead to force me into melee so that the pikes could catch up, but he was content to stay behind his pikes, allowing me to escape if the pathfinder could manage to get me out of the town. Once I was finally out, I set up on the fields just outside the town, and the enemy continued through to follow me. I was planning here to get some volleys off on those pikes, thinking we might be able to bring them down in number. Not really doing anything though. Militia inaccurate and firing at their longer range so that we don't get too close to the pikes means we're not really going to do anything. This second unit actually wasn't firing at all, as you can see. They're just standing, looking pretty casual about the whole thing, and the enemy's general is coming into point blank range, so I ordered them to fire at the general, and finally they get their act together. We get a volley on their general. He turns to run, and we kill loads of his guards as he escapes. Fantastic. Unfortunate not to kill the general himself, because he would have been right at the front there. Can't hang around to fire at them any longer because we need to get out of there before the pikes catch up, and they are getting close. Luckily they stopped to do some reforming just as I tried to leave, so that buys me a little bit of time. I almost considered going back to fire at them some more, but we're too close. I'm going to get out of there. I don't want to take any risks about being caught in melee with the pikes, especially so close to the edge of the map where it's hard to escape. What I end up doing is splitting my 2 units up, the pikes getting really close and actually killing a couple of one of the units there. But by splitting them up, we're going to make sure that we can have one unit always firing on the pikes while the other runs, and this seems like a good way to do damage to them. The only downside to this plan is that the units on their own are going to be weak against charges from the enemy general. We won't be able to overwhelm him so much, but we're going to try this strategy out. The enemy's general has proved unwilling to commit to fights anyway, so maybe it's not so bad. The pikemen almost run off the map by the looks of things, and then they charge this unit. We're going to get out of there. We'll see how this crazy fight continues in the next episode. In a single engagement, the value of the East India Company was cut in half. The East Indies trade fleet was entirely lost, leaving the valuable trade routes free to be usurped by not only the victorious Spanish, but the host of other powers patrolling the area. The resources to build new ships were unlikely to reach India when the war with Spain demanded ships for the home theatre, so Governor Grotius was left with only his damaged fleets in East Africa. To reclaim the East Indies would mean to leave what little income they could still earn to the mercy of any other Spanish raiders who appeared from around the Cape of Good Hope. It was a downward spiral not unlike the one that had claimed the First West India Company decades earlier. Thanks for watching. We'll have plenty more scuffles with Spain in the next episode of Sinews of War.